Molly Smith is asleep in a small room behind the big house, the servants' quarters. One door, one window, a stove that barely holds its heat this time of year. She works for the family that lives in front. She cooks for them. It's the dead week between Christmas and New Year's, and the whole street has gone quiet early. Beside her, the man she lives with, Walter Spencer, is asleep too. It is an ordinary night at the end of an ordinary year, and sometime before dawn, someone opens that one door. Just before daybreak, Walter Spencer wakes up bleeding from wounds to his head, attacked in his own bed, in the dark, and somehow still alive. Molly is gone. He staggers next door for help. It takes until morning light to find her. Outside, near the outhouse, behind the property, killed with something heavy and sharp. An axe. Nothing meaningfully stolen. No confrontation anyone heard. Whoever did this walked into a sleeping household, did what he came to do, and walked back out into the dark. Here's what nobody standing in that yard on December 30th, 1884, can possibly know. This is not a robbery gone wrong, and it is not a lone tragedy. It is the first entry in a ledger that will fill for exactly 1 year, almost to the night, before it stops as suddenly as it started. Before it's over, an entire American city will sleep in shifts with the lamps burning. Hundreds of men will be dragged into cells for it. One man will be convicted of it, and not one of those things, not one, will be the truth of what happened. Because this case was never solved, and the story of why it wasn't solved is uglier than the killer himself. Austin, Texas, in 1885 does not think of itself as a place where this happens. It's a boom town of maybe 22,000 people, a state capital putting up a grand new Capitol building, stringing its first electric lights, selling itself as the civilized jewel of the New South. And like every prosperous southern city of its era, it runs on a workforce it barely looks at. Black cooks, maids, and washerwomen, most of them living the way Molly Smith lived, in small servants' quarters behind the white households they worked for. Remember that geography. One-room cabins, set back from the street, behind the main house. Every crime in this story starts with it. Through the winter and spring of 1885, the attacks keep coming, and they keep landing on the same kind of victim, in the same kind of room. The press doesn't have a name for it yet. When the name finally arrives, it comes from a strange place, a 20-something bank teller and aspiring writer living in Austin at the time, who jokes grimly in a letter about the city's servant girl annihilators. His name is William Sidney Porter. The world will later know him as the writer O. Henry. The name sticks, the servant girl annihilator, because it's vivid and because it sounds like a single monster. Hold that thought. The record never actually proves there was only one, so ask the obvious question. A killer is entering homes in a city of 22,000 people, over and over, for a year. How does he never get caught? The comfortable answer is that he was a phantom, brilliant, ghost-like, ahead of his time. The evidence points somewhere much less flattering. At a police force of about a dozen men, with no detectives, no forensics, and one operating assumption they refuse to let go of, that crimes against black victims must have black perpetrators, probably someone the victim knew. For most of 1885, that assumption is the entire investigation, which means, for most of 1885, the man opening those doors at night has effectively no one looking for him at all. In March, 2 servant women, Clara Strand and Christine Martinson, are attacked in the night and badly wounded. Both survive. In the early hours of May 6th, A cook named Eliza Shelley is found murdered in her cabin behind the house where she worked, killed with something like an axe while her young children were nearby. Barely 2 weeks later, May 22nd, a woman named Irene Cross is attacked with a knife, wounds so severe she dies of them. Same hours of the night, same kind of quarters, same kind of victim. Now watch what the investigation does with that pattern, because this is the part of the story that decides everything after it. After Molly Smith's murder, police arrest the most convenient man available, a black man named Walter Spence, connected to Molly's past. The case against him is so thin that when it reaches trial, a jury needs 2 days to acquit him. After Eliza Shelley, they detain her own family members, and a barefoot man, whose footprints don't even match, held anyway. And after each new attack, the same reflex: round up black men near the scene, hold them, sweat them, release them when nothing sticks. By the end of the year, the tally of men arrested or questioned this way will run to something like 400. 400 arrests. 0 murder convictions that survive scrutiny. Ask yourself what that number actually means. It means the city's response to a serial predator was to criminalize, block by block, the same community he was preying on. Every night spent interrogating another innocent porter or field hand is a night the real trail goes cold. The victim's neighbors understand this perfectly. Black Austinites are the only people treating the attacks as connected, arming themselves, sitting up nights in each other's cabins. The city's official position is still that these are separate, ordinary crimes. The man doing this has now attacked at least 6 people, and as far as anyone hunting him is concerned, he does not exist. On the last night of August, the case crosses a line that even 1885 Austin cannot look away from. The victim found in the quarters behind a house on San Marcos Street is Mary Ramey. She is 11 years old. We're not going to walk through what was done to her. The trial-era record does that, and it should stay there. It is enough to say that she was beaten, assaulted, and killed, and that her mother, wounded in the same attack, survived to find her, a child, and still no arrest that holds. 4 weeks later, September 28th, Gracie Vance is dragged from her cabin behind her employer's home and murdered in the adjacent lot. Her injuries so brutal the press coverage strains its own vocabulary describing them. We won't linger there either. What matters for this story is what happens next, the closest thing to a real lead all year. Bloodhounds are brought to the scene. They trail to a man named Tom Allen. Another suspect, William Brooks, is pursued around the same period. Both are black, both fit the police theory instead of the evidence, and both are cleared. The dog scent case against Allen falls apart when a doctor discredits it outright. That was the best the investigation ever got. A dog, and a theory a physician could dismantle. By October, Austin is a city transformed. Businesses empty at dusk. Men sleep in shifts on porches with shotguns across their knees. The city hires extra guards, floats rewards, and the arrests keep churning, because arrests look like action, and action is what a frightened city demands. And then the attacks just stop. October passes. Nothing. November passes. Nothing. The lamps burn a little lower. The papers exhale. Maybe one of the 400 men they'd swept up had been the right one after all. Maybe it's over. It is not over. What's coming is the worst night in the history of the city. And it's coming on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve in Austin, 1885, is mild and busy. Church services, late shoppers, lamplit parlors. Around midnight, a man named Moses Hancock finds his wife Sue in their backyard, mortally wounded, an axe nearby. Within the hour, blocks away, 17-year-old Eula Phillips is found dead in the yard behind her in-laws' house, where she lived with her husband Jimmy. 2 attacks, one night, hours apart. And notice what has changed, because all of Austin notices, instantly. Sue Hancock and Eula Phillips are not servants. They are white, married, middle-class women attacked inside the respectable heart of the city. For a full year, this killer took the lives of black women, and the city's institutions treated it as background noise. It takes exactly one night of white victims for those same institutions to declare an emergency. Mass meetings at the Capitol, demands for the governor, talk of martial law, a city that finally behaves like it's being hunted. The record doesn't let you look away from that comparison, so we won't. The panic was always warranted. It just wasn't distributed evenly. Here is the strangest fact in the whole case, and it's the one to hold on to going into what happens next. After Christmas Eve, 1885, after the boldest, most shocking night of the entire spree, the killings stop. Completely. Forever. No confession, no capture, no body pulled from a river with an axe in its bedroll. The most prolific killer in Texas simply ceases to exist. A city this frightened cannot live with a story that has no ending. So Austin is about to write one. It will just have to ruin an innocent man to do it. Looks, at first, exactly like the break in the case a year of failure has been begging for. Investigators looking at the Phillips crime scene decide the answer was never a phantom in the dark at all. It was the man asleep a few feet away. Eula's husband, Jimmy Phillips. Never mind that Jimmy was found in his bed, wounded and bloodied himself, attacked the same night. Never mind that a man butchering his wife has no obvious reason to half-kill himself in the process. The theory writes itself the way convenient theories do: a bad marriage, a jealous husband, a crime dressed up to look like the fiend's work. Moses Hancock briefly faces the same suspicion over Sue. 1 year earlier, almost to the night, a man named Walter Spencer woke up bleeding in the dark beside an empty bed, and the city's answer was to arrest the nearest black man. Now Jimmy Phillips wakes up bleeding in the dark beside a dead wife. Same crime, same script, different casting. In the spring of 1886, the state of Texas puts Jimmy Phillips on trial for the murder of his wife, and wins. Conviction. The courtroom gets its verdict. The newspapers get their headline. And the city of Austin gets the one thing it has wanted more than justice for over a year: an ending. The servant girl case, as an active hunt, effectively dies in that courtroom. Why keep looking for a phantom when a jury just told you his name? Stand in that moment the way Austin wanted to stand in it. The lamps can go out. The shotguns can come off the porches. The capital of Texas is safe because the monster has a face now. And the face is a 19-year-old husband already broken by the night that made him a widower. It's a clean ending. It's a satisfying ending. And essentially, every serious examination of this case since has reached the same conclusion about it. It was a false one. So let's grade it. The convicted husband? Jimmy Phillips's conviction did not stand. It was overturned on appeal, and he walked free. Historians who've audited this case broadly agree on what that prosecution actually was. Not a solve, but a scapegoating, a way to hand a terrified public a resolution and make the panic stop. Nobody was ever convicted of any of the 8 killings and lived it down as fact. Roughly 400 men arrested, every case evaporated. The ledger's final line is one sentence long. The murders stopped in December 1885, and no one ever learned who committed them. Which brings us to the legend. because this case grew a spectacular one. 3 years after Austin's killer vanished, the Whitechapel murders began in London, and a theory was born that refuses to die, that Austin's phantom crossed the Atlantic and became Jack the Ripper. And here's the strange part: that theory isn't pure tabloid invention. London's Metropolitan Police really did look at a possible American connection to the Whitechapel killings, and the timeline genuinely fits. Austin's spree ends in 1885, the Rippers begins in 1888, and the Liverpool-Texas cotton trade ran steamships between the two worlds. But be honest about what that is: a coincidence of dates and a shipping route. Scotland Yard never substantiated it, and most historians consider it unproven and unlikely. The cases don't even rhyme when you look closely. The Rippers' victims were all white women. Austin's were mostly black women, plus a wounded man and a murdered child. Patterns Whitechapel never showed. The record does not settle who Austin's killer was. It settles only that he was never caught. And that's the real verdict here, not on the killer, but on the city. The legend needs a phantom, because a phantom flatters everyone. You can't blame a police force for failing to catch a ghost. The ledger shows something no ghost was needed for. A year of warnings written in the blood of black women that the city chose to read as isolated noise. 400 men jailed for the crime of proximity. An investigation that only became urgent when the victims became white. And a closing act that convicted a wounded, innocent teenager because an ending, any ending, was worth more than the truth. The killer walked out of history untouched. He didn't outsmart Austin. Austin was looking the other way on purpose. Every unsolved case leaves a hole, and holes get filled with monsters. It's easier to live beside a phantom than beside the plain arithmetic of who was protected and who wasn't. Austin got its monster, and eventually even loaned him to London. What it never got was an answer, because it stopped paying for one the moment the fear moved back out of the nice neighborhoods. The door was never locked. Somebody just decided to stop watching it.